Hello, how are you guys doing? Today on the show, we have one of my favourite comedians. It's Mr. Daniel SLOSS. He was on the podcast last year, very hungover. This time on the podcast, he's very philosophical because Daniel brings a show to the Melbourne International Comedy Festival that's getting huge critical acclaim, and it's all about whether or not he is a sociopath or not. He's doing that exploration. It's not up to the audience to yell out, sociopath! Daniel explores issues and themes of his life that perhaps may have made him a sociopath. He reaches a conclusion at the end of the show. It's an amazing combination of comedy, philosophy. If you're an Aristotle fan, get the hell down to this show. It actually may be sold out, so I mean, just live vicariously through this podcast. It's kind of the same as a live show. It's a fun one. It's a good one. Mr. Daniel SLOSS, been killing it since the age of 18. He kills it on this podcast. You're listening to The Ferg Neil Show.
Some people you ought to know. Don't worry because he will say hello for you. Here we go. It's the Ferg Neil Show.
Alright, Daniel SLOSS, you're in the studio this time last year, very hungover. Hungover this time, or how are you doing?
Good. Not necessarily hungover.
Okay.
I was drinking a bit last night, smoking a fair bit of weed. So it's more just like a chilled sort of.
Okay.
Yeah, I had to wake up in the morning to go deliver some stuff to a friend, and then
Okay.
sort of got back and just laced about.
Because
Just
that
comfortable.
pen you had now reminds me. Is that a weed pen, or is that just?
Oh no, this is
that-
just an e-cigarette.
Yeah, okay. Because in LA, weed pens are huge.
Oh, they're amazing.
Everyone has one.
Yeah,
Everyone
yeah.
has one.
No, I wish I was in Denver before I came to Australia, where
Okay.
obviously you can have the weed pens. There's just not a chance. I know some people that have for Americans that bring edibles over on planes. I'm just never willing to
Yeah.
take that risk. For me, it's just I've come to Australia for years. I go to America. I'm not willing to risk anything that stops me going to any country. So I'll just.
Because I had an edible for the first time when I was living in LA, and I reckon I was high for 3 days, having not really dabbled in marijuana.
Oh, they're so I can swear on this.
Really, yeah, go for it.
Yeah,
you can say
they're
whatever you
so
want.
fucking
Yeah.
potent over the
Crazy potent. Because even when you digest it, what is it, the THC, the HTC, I can't remember, one of those levels, it doesn't leave your system for 3 days.
Yeah.
It stays there.
Kai, my best friend, knows more of the science of it. When you
He studied
ingest,
it, yeah.
whenever you do, it turns into something else when it's in your stomach, so it becomes more of a hallucinogen as opposed to when you just smoke
Okay.
THC by itself.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
I enjoy edibles, but I much prefer just smoking it because I know my limits on
Yeah.
smoking. You can always stop.
Yeah.
There's no point when you're smoking weed and you go, I can stop now, but once you've eaten an edible, you don't get to decide how high you
Yeah,
get. It
yeah.
decides.
You've got to digest it.
Aye.
Yeah. In LA, we did an interview with Orny Adams backstage at the Hollywood Improv, and he was talking about how prevalent cocaine is because he was on his way over to Australia. Did you notice that when you were in LA, the cocaine, I think that the street value is $30, and in Australia it's $300.
Yeah.
And all around Los Angeles is the big billboards that say does LA have a cocaine problem? Did you find any of that kind of drug called? I know you've been on Conan O'Brien 7 or 8 times.
Yeah.
Do you kind of sway away from that kind of underground LA scene?
I'm just whenever I'm in LA, I'm not really hanging out with
Yeah, okay.
I gig in LA, but I'm definitely not part of the scene there. I've got a friend over there who works for PlayStation.
Yeah, okay.
I stay with him whenever I'm there. He's got obviously a PlayStation Great TV and a
Yeah.
marijuana license. I just tend to stay at his and just.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely there was a great tweet the other day. The 2 things you learn when you grow up is that cheese is expensive and everyone does cocaine, and it's just and it's very, very true. I remember, just finding out when you're growing up how many people do drugs because for your whole life and your whole childhood you're taught that it's evil, you're always going to be approached at a party by someone, and then you just suddenly realise it's just something that a lot of people do just to help them get through the day.
Yeah. Well, that's why I reckon it's so good that it's been legalised in California. Is because you can still get arrested in Australia, but of course the people who are getting arrested in Australia are people from minorities, so it's just racist police.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Which is the same with pretty much all drugs everywhere. It's just an excuse to incarcerate.
It's insane.
Yeah.
You're currently exploring whether or not you are a sociopath or not.
Mm.
How has that been going? How do you even initially undertake to take?
Well, I've been called a sociopath a lot.
Okay.
I'm very aware that my brain probably works different from other people, and I've got different views. But I know for a fact I'm not a sociopath. Sociopaths lack empathy, and I'm a highly empathetic person.
Okay.
Just because I don't necessarily let that empathy come to the surface does not mean it It doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So my demeanour can occasionally be sociopathic, but so that's what the show is about. Is just me explaining why people think I'm a sociopath, why I think I am not one.
Yeah.
But it's just a word it's thrown around because people don't understand it, and
Sure,
they associate the word sociopath with evilness or
Yeah.
violence, and that's not what sociopathy
Well, it's a word that gets chucked around a lot, even in like kind of medial conversations. Like someone will do something not that bad, and someone like, you're a sociopath. Yeah, which is not. My mum's a mental health clinician, and I think the difference between like being a psychopath and a sociopath. Psychopaths are born, sociopaths are made.
Yes.
Also, sociopaths do have some level of empathy, whereas a psychopath has no level of empathy.
Yes, and psychopaths also do not necessarily have emotions, but they know how to understand them and manipulate them to their own personal gain.
Yeah.
Whereas sociopaths can be absolutely manipulative and they can be selfish and whatnot, but it's just not a blanket overall.
It's interesting as well because another sign of a sociopath is skepticism towards relationships. And last year's show, well, of course, you had 500 relationships break down because of the show. I'll probably not say breakdown, maybe like came out of their own way, came into fruition through breaking up. Yeah. So like, is that something you kind of like, when you see two people who perhaps were together and now aren't together, did you kind of revel in that? Like,
100%.
was it?
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah, of course. Like, I think it's a good deed. Like, like I, as I said, I think there is a certain level of arrogance to people who are in relationships because we're raised in a society, in a world through media and the news and whatever, where everyone's, the goal is to be in a relationship that's normality, even though it's not normality. There's an arrogance to people who are in relationships because they've got there before everyone else.
Sure,
and
yeah.
That's what all their Facebook feeds and their Instagram. Me and this one going for coffee, and it's like, you haven't, you're not better than single people just because and let's be, most of the time you didn't find the one. You
found someone.
You found someone and you changed yourself or you changed them. Like, it's not the same. You don't get to brag about doing it. And I just hated it. For years I've always loved being single, but there was always that, not level of guilt, but just people being like, oh, you'll find someone. It's like, fuck you, it's not up to you. Like, how dare you assume what I want? And my retaliation to that was, if you keep putting doubt into single people's heads, I will happily fill your head with fucking doubt as well.
Yeah, because...
Like, if you want to play the game, that's me, and that's one of the other reasons why I know I get called a sociopath, is I have very, very specific views on revenge.
Okay. But that's not sociopathic, that could almost be described as rational.
I would argue that it's absolutely rational, which is, my argument for revenge is always, the reason I'm not horrible to people, or I try not to be horrible to people, is because I remember people being horrible to me and how that made me feel. So I would never want to make anyone feel as bad as I've been made to feel in the past. But if you are an asshole to me or someone I love, I can only assume it's because you've not been made to feel that way before. So I will absolutely take that responsibility and make you feel like shit until you develop empathy.
But what about if it's like circumstantially, or this is people who grow up and perhaps their homes aren't conducive to like I've met, obviously we've all met like a lot of arseholes, but like I always think, are they choosing to be arseholes, or is it because their environment, maybe their dad beat them when they were younger, that type of thing. Do you kind of, does that ever come into your thinking when you're kind of like formulating, do I destroy this person, or do I kind of like explain to it gently? Like Hannah Gatsby said, like a bigot never gets unbigoted by being yelled at, called a bigot. You know what I mean? Like it's that kind of thing. And is that kind of like weird dialogue thing you have to have?
I don't know if it's necessarily a dialogue. Like my approach on stage is very different to my approach in real life.
Of course.
My approach on stage with dealing with assholes and stuff like that is to have that fair and rational debate. Whereas my approach with assholes in real life is to just cut you out of my life immediately. If you're negative and I don't need you in my life, don't think for a second I don't see the good in people. I don't really forgive people. It's one and done with me because there's 7 billion people on this planet. I'll find someone new. You're not fucking unique. None of us are.
It's interesting because last time we had you on the podcast, I was in a relationship. And I'm not sure if it was related, but then 2 weeks later, I came out of a 2-year relationship, and you got brought up in the final argument. She said, "Go tell Daniel SLOSS about this tally because it's been added to one more." Freud has this dissertation that I got shown by a friend who saw your show and told me the synopsis of it, and said that sociopaths also have an obsession with death. Do you have an obsession with death, or like mortality, or other people's mortality?
I don't think so. I'm not obsessed with death.
Okay.
I mean, I'd rather not fucking die.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't want to die. I really love my life. I don't want the people I love to die.
Yeah, okay.
No, I wouldn't say I was. I find it interesting. I contemplate it a lot. You
Yeah.
know, because my view is very much one and done.
Yeah, okay.
Like, there's no afterlife. There's no higher consciousness.
Okay.
There's none of that hippie bullshit.
Okay, yeah,
We
yeah.
have one
So
life.
you would identify as like a straight level atheist?
Yeah, I mean, I think other atheists are ruining the word atheist. I
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
want to fucking tarnish myself. No, I'm just. And don't get me wrong, I used to be that annoying atheist. I
Okay.
absolutely
There
did.
are really annoying atheists
There's
out there.
every group in the world has a fucking even. I imagine there's even Buddhists that are just fucking assholes. Like it's not unique.
Yeah.
As a species, we're not great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was absolutely that annoying atheist that was just like, lecturing fucking people, and I've still got that. It's still very much my view probably in my head, but I
Okay.
just try to make it less
Prominent.
outward as much.
okay.
Yeah.
Well, some of your bits on religion are some of the most popular clips that you have on YouTube as well. Do you feel kind of like, I find it interesting, like, because when you're a comedian, all that you've said is archived. So you got to think, well, how can I progress as a performer and a person if whatever I'm saying now is kind of in line to what I've said previously? Like, you could perhaps, like, it'd be very difficult for you to backtrack and be like, actually, no, I believe in a higher power. I've done this George Harrison thing. I've gone to India and started meditating.
Oh no, I think the archive is much is actually better for that.
Okay.
I think it's very important to be able to go back on what I said before and be like, yeah, I used to think that way.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
But I've said some stuff. I've done some jokes in the past that I'm not happy with anymore because my views have changed. And,
Okay.
and I'm glad they're out there because occasionally people will be like, but you said this, and I was like, yeah, and I was wrong then.
Okay.
I was
yeah,
absolutely wrong then. I was
Yeah.
young. I was cocky. I still am, but I've learned enough since then that I'm willing to hold my hands up and say that opinion then was wrong, and I now
Okay.
know why. But I would never want those things taken off or out of the archive because that
Okay.
would be denying progress.
Okay.
That would be me pretending that I was this infallible person
Yeah.
that was perfect from the fucking start, which
Yeah.
I'm absolutely not.
Yeah.
And I hope in the future that there's routines I have now that I disagree with because
Okay.
that's progression.
Progress, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you feel tied to the idea, because it's so built up around you and all your shows, and you've obviously this is the third time you've come to Melbourne, of being like a dark comedian, someone who explores dark material? Do you kind of feel like when you're writing a show, like, oh shit, I'm going to have to write some dark stuff when perhaps I don't necessarily have it, or is that just like is that a poor assumption?
No, it's a decent enough assumption because I never wanted to be a dark comedian. It's not something I try to do.
Okay,
or
so you
aim
didn't
to.
start out like that thinking I'm going to idolize people like Frankie Boyle or those kind of...
No. That was
Okay.
just sort of what made me laugh, and then I realized it was honesty. I think it's just honesty I enjoyed on stage. Like I love one-liner comics and
Yeah,
sketch
yeah.
comics and stuff like that. But the stuff that always spoke to me was genuine stuff, truth.
Yeah.
And it's also like I don't think my sense of humor is dark. I'm saying, I hate the phrase, I'm just saying what everyone is thinking, but the thing I enjoy on stage is, whenever you say something, in fact, the reason the audience is laughing is because part of their brain, it's also in there. Like, it's not me that thinks, I'm not saying something that was like, oh my God, you do agree with me in some semblance. Even if you don't agree fully, you know where I'm coming from because we've had the same sort of thoughts. We act as if we're all innocent and pure, and that's why I always find so funny when audiences act shocked. And I'm like,
okay.
you're not shocked by what I'm saying. You're just shocked that you're not alone.
Sure, yeah. It's also that kind of thing, like, do you see a difference between your performative self and your day-to-day self? Like, in your day-to-day self, are you kind of like a contemplative, like, someone who will think philosophically about dark issues or dark topics?
Yeah, I enjoy debate and stuff like that. I love,
Yeah.
my friends are all very, very smart, much smarter than I am, and I like having those, I do like having my views challenged because, it allows me, that's when I write most of my stand-up, is if I get into a debate with someone, and I realize I stumble across an opinion I wasn't aware that I had, or how strongly I felt in it and stuff. And, yeah, a lot of my stand-up is a one-sided argument. It's me going, and I know you'll say this, and here's my rebuttal, and I know you'll say this as well, but here's also my rebuttal.
Okay.
It's just, I'm not saying I'm necessarily right all the time. Of course I think I'm right all the time, because anyone who doesn't think they're right I've never understood that.
Yeah.
When people always say, you always think you're right, and you're like, Of course I do. I wouldn't have an opinion if I didn't think it was correct.
Yeah.
But with my stand, it's not necessarily. I like the fact that in my stand-up, I'm saying this is what I believe, and you absolutely do not have to agree with it. But we can all admit that you can follow my train of thought.
Okay.
I've chosen a very selective journey to arrive at the conclusion I'm about to, and most of the time, my stuff could be proven wrong or debated to much more depth, but that's not the point of it. It's to, you've paid to hear my side of things and my fucked up view in the world.
So what do you see as like the purpose of stand-up comedy? Do you see it as like entertainment? Do you see it as like illuminating truths? Or do you see it as just kind of like, how would you conceptualize what like stand-up comedy is to you in like the wider societal context?
Actually, it depends on the comedian.
Okay.
Like, there's some comedians who are, clean and, there's not necessarily that much substance to what they're saying, but they're entertainers, and they're entertaining the masses, are making people feel better. And if that's what they think stand-up comedy, then who am I to deny that? If you're like, I'm just out there to entertain. But people are entertained in different ways. In the same way that like I love that sort of stand-up and watching it. I always prefer stand-up what that makes me think.
Okay.
I always like the stand-up shows where after you watch it, you could go to the pub afterwards and talk to your friends about it. I'm not saying one is better than the other one, but that's my preference, and it's also my audience's preference. And it's the reason it's not other people's, because the purpose of stand-up comedy is absolutely to make people laugh. It's to entertain people. The purpose of my stand-up for me is one, probably arguably therapy of some sort, and just I don't know. I do it because I enjoy it. I'm not trying to change the world. I'm just trying to make sure that my thoughts aren't so fucked up that I need to go to, a psych ward.
Yeah. But is stand-up then a hedonistic pursuit in the sense that if it's not contributing something to the wider world, like if someone says, I'm just doing stand-up because I enjoy the validation of an audience and that kind of thing, you know what I mean? Does that make it any less honourable in the sense that when there's people like Jon Stewart who say, no, I'm doing stand-up, but I'm also going to use that as a platform to kind of put forward like a liberal agenda that I believe in and I think should be spread?
Yeah, I'm definitely pushing forward my agenda. I think a lot of stand-up is, pushing forward what you believe and explaining it in a way. The great thing about pushing an agenda in stand-up is you're making jokes all the way through. It's comfortable. It's you're making it entertaining instead of just lecturing people and shouting at them and calling them wrong. You're doing it in funny ways and you're also making fun of yourself. I like making people think, and I like obviously I would like them to agree with me because I think I'm correct, but in the same way I might fucking not be.
Yeah. It's interesting, like, because some of your material could be almost, and you've said it now, like, seen as like a counselling type, like cathartic experience. I know when you did that show that focused upon your sister, like, it's interesting, in a counselling session, it's always very serious and, like, the tension's so much in the air and it's really uncomfortable. But then there's this kind of ability that stand-ups have to, when you talk about something in a humorous way, it kind of pops the tension out of the air. And I find it interesting that kind of like psychoanalysis and also like counselling services haven't, kind of almost identified that comedy in that sense can alleviate like a sense of pain from people. Have you found that, like, when you think about something, oh shit, serious in my head, now it's on stage and we're all laughing about it together, oh my goodness, this is cathartic?
Yeah, 100%. And that's, the fucked up thing about being a comedian is every time something terrible happens to me, the first thing that pops into my head is like, fuck, this can be a joke.
Yeah.
And I like that. I think, to go back to the sort of question, like, what's the purpose of stand-up? I don't necessarily know if my stand-up has a purpose, but I've realised that there's some points, after I did the show about my sister, the amount of people I had coming up to me afterwards who either had lost someone or they were related to someone with a disability or they had a disability themselves. A lot of them were like, we really liked how openly and honestly you spoke about it. And that was never my intention to sort of do that, but it was one of the effects of it. And I did enjoy it. I was like, okay, so what's, if it helped me and it helps other people to, deal with death in some form of way. I'm not saying it like I should never be my special of that should never be the go-to for the second somebody dies in your family. You've got to deal with it yourself.
Yeah.
But when you're ready to laugh about it, you can. I think there's always that thing that my stand up is always my perspective. I'm like, this is what my experience of this thing, and this is the lesson I took away from it, as opposed to the way I've done stand up before, and the reason the jokes don't work. I'm like, this is the fact about this, and this is how you should deal with it.
Okay.
You can't tell people how to deal with things. You can't tell them how to live their life. But what I can do is offer my experiences, the conclusions I drew from it, and why, and this is why I talk about it in such ways, and then give people the chance to agree or disagree. You can't tell them you should be able to laugh about death afterwards. You should be able to find the humour in everything. All I can say is I can find the humour in this situation, and it took me a while, or I found it instantly, or whatever. Yeah.
So that's why I respect your comedic work. And like, of course, I love comedians like Jimmy Carr and Milton Jones. But to me, their stuff feels quite ephemeral, whereas your stuff seems to have this kind of material substance because it does resonate with that kind of like, almost like a philosophy. And obviously that sounds like a grandiose term. But like the fact that you said like now that people coming up after the shows, and I imagine like people could return to your stand-up in future dates. And I'm sure there are people who've had like a similar experience with family members who've gone through that. And they go, hey, here's this person who's in the public limelight who's like illuminating this. Have you found like, we had Arj Barker on the podcast and he discussed this, where he said that he was happier on his comedic rise than he was once he made it in comedy. Does that resonate with you at all? Have you found your like happiness, inverted commas, like on a like inclined trajectory?
A bit. I mean, I guess I'm still on the rise in a lot of senses. I was very successful from a young age, about 19 till about 22 or 23. Oh no, in fact, probably about 19 to 22 was a sort of very, very strong rise in my career.
Yeah.
And then it plateaued for a bit.
Okay.
But it's still in a good way, the fact that, I was still going over to America and doing stuff, and I was, doing Europe and coming to Australia and doing all this stuff, but it definitely felt like, the venues weren't necessarily getting bigger. I was still doing the graft. I don't think that my happiness necessarily plateaued. There was definitely points when I was like, it's, frustrating that there's not been this second boom yet.
Okay, I get you,
But because I'd had so much success early on, I wasn't comfortable feeling that way. I was like, I had to catch myself. The second I found myself being like, oh, why am I not getting this, or why have they got there? I'm like, you've got to remember, cunt, that you got success when you were 19. You got that TV break nobody else did. If other people are getting more work now and they're grafting and it's their time, it's their time. It's not saying there won't be a second time. It's not saying there won't be a third. This isn't the end. But, you don't get to begrudge other people the opportunities they're getting because they didn't begrudge me when I got my opportunities. And maybe they did, but they had the decency to do it in private, so I will do the exact same.
But so then you see contentment in a way as going like alongside with your comedic career. Like, is comedy directly tied to your happiness?
100%.
Okay,
100%.
Okay, so more so than even like if you fell in love with somebody, you would still see comedy as being your kind of meaning in life, your kind of place where you get contentment, happiness.
Yeah, I've always said that whenever I get into a relationship, and it's a very selfish way to look at things, but it's the way I think now. If I get into a relationship, the person I'm with has to be prepared to marry comedy. Like, this is my life, and I love my life. I travel, and most of my friends are in comedy, and I'll have an interest in their things, but this is not just a job, it is a lifestyle.
Sure.
My whole life is comedy, Every time I'm talking, I'm thinking of jokes, and everything that's building up, I'm always sort of writing. My brain's always, I love this job. And, if I'm going to get into a relationship, I'm not willing to sacrifice any of this for a person.
See, that's interesting because Jerry Seinfeld's talked about that as well early on in his career. When people ask him why wasn't he entering into a relationship, he said, like, well, kind of what you said, like, I'm in love with comedy, and to do something else would be a distraction from what I actually am in love with. And Jordan Peterson has also talked about there is such an importance to have this kind of central meaning to life, because often, like, there'll be times where people show you malevolence, hatred, that kind of thing, but if you have this one central thing that's driving you and giving you purpose, that'll give you fulfillment and like help you arrive at the destination you want to get to. Then that also kind of brings back to, well, are there these people in society who don't have that fulfillment, don't have that meaning, that drive, so they kind of try and find that in another, like a girlfriend, a boyfriend, whatever, that kind of thing. And I think you discussed that in your show, that instead of people finding their own meaning themselves, they try and do it vicariously through
someone else,
others.
You never learn how to love yourself, so you employ someone else to do it for you.
Yeah. It's weird though, because having been in a long-term relationship, it does kind of allow you to look at yourself in a mirror. The problem is that mirror starts to crack after a while, and then you stop kind of moving forward yourself.
Yeah, but I think that's the thing about, as much as I shit on relationships, I think you can ask most people who are in good, strong relationships with their soulmates, that none of them care about that. They're like, it's this person for the rest of my life. Like, I mean, we can sit there and lecture all we want, but I bet you, look, I bet the ones that are genuinely happy are genuinely happy. They're like, I had dreams and ambitions, but nothing compares to this person. And that's why you can't begrudge them for that. And and that is ultimately what I want one day. I want to be a dad. I want to get married. All that stuff. But for now, it's I'm 27. It's got to take something special, and I'm also not looking for it, because at this point in my life, stand up is filling most of the I don't want to say holes in my life, because I don't want it to I'm not empty. I don't want I think depression is such a prevalent and brutal thing that so many people suffer from and fight every day and kick its ass very regularly. It's not something I suffer from. I'm very fortunate with that. So I would never want to be one of those fucking people that's like, I know what you're going through. I do not know. I do not know what depressed people are going through at all, but I am fucking impressed to the core. So it's that's, I'm not filling a void. There's not this I love stand-up. I love doing it. I love the lifestyle, and I love the lifestyle that it brings me as well. If I'm good at this and I'm great at this and I keep doing it, I get to keep living my life and seeing all my friends.
So you wouldn't identify with like Russell Brand's philosophy, where he said he entered to stand-up comedy because he was trying to fill a void. It sounds very cliche, but is that kind of something, like, obviously, like when you go on stage, you must feel a rush?
Oh, absolutely. It's definitely given me something, and as I've said, it is a form of therapy. Like I very much like talking about my dark inner thoughts and finding out that I'm not alone with them. Like, it's definitely feeling something. And if I weren't to do stand-up, like, it would probably, trust me, I would feel empty. Like, absolutely. Because it's me now. I am a stand-up. Like, that's my life, and I want it to be that. If I didn't have it, I would probably break down. I'd probably get depressed.
Okay, that's interesting.
I absolutely would. Because it's my life. It's my dream job. It's the one I'm doing. It's
It's also kind of everything having found success early. Well, like the comics like Mickey Flanagan, who kind of like crack it when he was, I guess, wasn't he 30? Like
35, 20, I think
35, and there's like Rodney Dangerfield, I think he was like early 40s or something. There's people who have these lives before, but the fact that you've kind of grown up in the industry. Same with Tom Ballard, who's a friend of mine. He grew up like in the confines of the comedy festival. Like, he won Best Newcomer when he was like 19 and kind of rose up through there. It's really hard to back out of a comedy career. You know what I mean? Like, if you found like in a year's time, like, okay, I'm still like doing this, what I'm like doing, but I'm not finding contentment from it anymore, would you kind of be like, or can you not even imagine that happening?
I don't know what I'd do. I can't imagine it happening, because all it would, I don't know what it would take. I mean, it might happen. Maybe I'll just say something fucking horrific one day, and then the brigade will get on my back and fuck my career. But I don't necessarily see it happening. But I would still have to do something involved with this, like whether I would just have to take a backseat and become a writer or something like that. I can't change the way my brain works.
I'm fascinated by comedians who are currently like stunted, and they now deny the ability to perform, like people like Aziz Ansari and Louis C.K. And we had Caroline Haldman on the podcast when we were in America, the CNN political expert, who brought to light allegations against Bill O'Reilly and brought him down. And I asked her, is there any time where, like, at one point, like Louis C.K. and Aziz Ansari, obviously, like, there is a line between those two actions and what they did, but like at one point they were babies, so like surely, like, I asked her like directly, would you ever go to a Louis C.K. show, like having known what she did? and she said, I think if society could come to accept what he'd done and that he'd said he'd forgiven, so that he'd said he'd apologised and we'd forgiven him, I can't see why people wouldn't go to his shows and relate to his stand-up again. But like, for instance, if you saw Louis C.K. perform now, would you kind of be like, in the back of your mind, it's kind of hard to relate to you because like you jerked off in front of all these women?
Well, he would, yeah. I mean, the thing about Louis' stand-up before it was that, you know, it was, you know, honest and there was the truth to it, and, you know, he was owning what he was as a person. If he were to do a stand-up set where he did not, you know, because he talks about everything, and if he were to do a show,
he would have to address it off the
if
bat.
he didn't address it, I would just be like, you're lying. You're lying. Like, this is not what's in the front of your mind. This isn't what's been on your mind for the past year and a half.
Yeah.
Like, you know, in that situation, it's a very sort of different, because what he did was utterly, you know, abhorrent. And, you know, he's admitted that, and then there's the whole debate, or is it enough? Is it genuine? Is he doing it for his, you know, career? There's all this stuff that I will never know, and, you know, I don't claim to know.
Yeah, we may never know.
We may never know.
Yeah.
But, I mean, he would have to talk, like, he's apologised for it, but it's just, at this point, it's still not enough. You know, it's very easy to say, you know, I know what I did wrong here, but there needs to be more than that. You need to show that you know what was wrong, like you understand how it was an abuse of power and why it was, you know, creepy and awful.
Yeah.
He'd have to own it. Like, if he tried to fob it off as a quick throw in a punchline, it's just like, you haven't changed and this isn't.
Yeah. It's also interesting because when you're watching stand-up comedians, it's almost like, and I imagine people come up to your bars like this as if they know you, because like it's kind of that thing where, as opposed to an actor, like it feels like you're talking directly, even though you're in an audience like 500 people, it does feel like it's almost like a one-on-one with the stand-up. You're learning about their lives and that kind of thing. Do you have people come up to you like that and kind of, it's almost as if they think they know you and they'll kind of like try and do that?
Oh, 100%, yeah. Okay. Especially because I do a podcast with Kai where we just are very open and talk stuff.
Yeah.
You get people coming up and very, very familiar as well, which I'm absolutely fine with. Sometimes it catches you off guard. They'll mention stuff and you're like, oh God, when did I talk about that?
Yeah.
But I enjoy that aspect of it. I like the fact that, you know, people feel like, you know, I'm their mate.
Yeah.
Because I've been honest with them. Like, I think there's just that I've been vulnerable in front of them all.
Is there anything you haven't talked on stage thus far that you think is like a next frontier or something you kind of would be working towards? Because remember you said last time you were on the podcast that when you first started talking about your sister, that was almost accidental because you went to a comedy night designed to talk about stuff you never discussed. Is there something kind of like there in the back of your mind, like, oh, should I talk about this, should I not? Or is it kind of like, you hope it will come to you?
I hope it will come to me. I'm obviously working on the next show. I'm just trying to work out, it's always like what's important to me and what's, you know, what do I want to talk about and what do I have a unique view on? Not necessarily what needs to be heard, which is obviously a factor in some of my writing, like, you know, what needs to be discussed. For me, it's always got to be passion. What am I genuinely passionate about at this time and why, and let's get into it. I'm still running through ideas in my head, trying to work out what it is. I think it's going to be either based on hate, confidence, or fear.
Okay, that's interesting.
Which are three big things in my life.
Do you ever find it like living the stand-up lifestyle that it'll ever get self-referential, so that if you're not living in the outside world and you're hanging out with only stand-up comedians in a stand-up environment, it'll like the comedy will lose its relatability if you're talking about like things on tour or that kind of thing where people can't connect to it? Like,
that's why I don't talk about it.
Okay. So do you ever have like a desire to kind of like, I'm going to do this experience and kind of hopefully this will give me some materials? I kind of know the material's going to come to me naturally.
No, material will come to me naturally. You know, I can't fucking force it. I've never been that type of
stand up.
Yeah. Okay. That's not how I write. It's sort of what comes to me. I would always want to, like, you know, make sure it was relatable. Me talking about being on tour and stuff is not relatable.
It's relatable.
It's also not. It might be interesting, but just because it's interesting doesn't mean I want to fucking fill a show with it.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, so you've had good bits before you think, okay, this isn't me though, so therefore I'm not going to perform it.
Yeah. You know, just like, nobody cares.
Yeah, okay.
Nobody wants to hear my ridiculous, you know, sex stories or my party nights where I've just, you know, gone mental for 3 days. You know, people might find it funny, but I'm just like, nah, this isn't what's
it's a bit
important.
ephemeral.
Yeah, it's just, it's time filler. There's no substance to it.
Yeah.
You know, I always sort of think, like, what did I learn from this? Like, here's my experiences and the conclusions I've drawn from it.
Yeah.
You know, I've done it before in shows where I'm just like, I need to fill 15 minutes of the show, I'll just throw in a sex story.
Okay, yeah.
I've absolutely done that, but not for
Yeah.
a couple of years. But yeah, just
Yeah.
like, all right, that's funny. Whereas now, I mean, knock wood, I don't struggle to fill an hour yet.
Yeah.
I mean, I might do, and then I might resort back to that. But for the time, you know, I'm not running short of things to say yet.
I mean, you're killing it like at the moment as well. And I can see that like working into the future because you've got these like philosophy and foundations behind you where you are trying to like produce material that is material. It's not ephemeral. It's like you think with that kind of philosophy, you can only like be held in good stead, I would imagine.
Fingers crossed.
Daniel Sloss, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Your show is called Now. It's the Melbourne International Comedy Festival. Always a joy, and it always goes philosophical places.
Here we go. It's the Ferg Neil Show. Well, there's some people you ought to know. Don't worry because he will say hello for you. Yeah.